Hi everybody, I'm Mark and I'm here to give you the top 5 beloved TV characters who actually are arseholes. So what is it I mean by this? I mean, we're talking about the sort of characters who we quite like, they're quite personable, or they're even indeed the heroes of our story. But yet actually if we were to meet them in real life, we'd walk away and go, what the fuck was that arsehole? So that's the sort of thing that we're talking about today. So I have two things before we get going. Number one, spoiler alert, I am obviously going to have to tell you some facts and figures you might not know about them yet from either their endings or from how their shows ended or indeed kind of what else may have happened to them in the long run. And number two, I'm only picking one person from a show. So what you're not going to get here is 5 of exactly the same show. These are 5 different characters from 5 different shows. I may well do 5 from those particular shows a little bit later on in this series of videos. I'm not sure. So above all, enjoy yourselves and let me know what you think.
Number 5, Mike Ross from Suits. So why is Mike Ross on the list? Well, actually, one of the reasons Mike Ross makes the list for me is this wonderful, wonderful memory that he has. He remembers everything. So he'll read a book, he remembers it. He reads a contract, he can remember it. He reads anything, it just sticks there in his brain. So what gets me is he could have applied that to any single business he ever wanted to go into, but he wanted to go into law. Fair play on that one. He then, of course, wanted to go to Harvard, but he didn't get in due to his own mistake. Let's not buy this by. We're all supposed to have sympathy for him, but he didn't have to do that favour for Trevor. Anyway, let's just gloss aside from all that, because that gets him too close to being an arsehole. But why does he officially get pushed over the edge? Because I asked myself one question. So you didn't get into Harvard. Why didn't you just go somewhere else, you thick idiot? I mean, you could have gone to night school, you could have gone to any of these places to get yourself certified. And if you can pass the bar anyway, why don't you just go and take it? Do you really need to do all of that study to go and actually pass the bar? Well, it seems apparently you must do, because that must be the only reason he's not sat there and thought of doing it before. Especially now, I mean, he'll even have the money, I'm sure, to tell someone to do it. So for me, Mike Ross has to be number 5, because quite clearly put, why do we even have to have any respect for his character when he could just march off and do it himself somewhere else? Number 4, Andrea from The Walking Dead. So there are a lot of arseholes in The Walking Dead, and why is it Andrea comes on top? Well, for me, my personal highlights of her arseholeness have to link to number 1, the fact that she spent so long moaning about her bloody gun. Every other sentence it seemed to be was, give me my gun, give me my gun. I see you get a gun, I want my gun, give me my gun, I want a gun. And you're like, oh. So eventually they handed one over to her, but it turned out she couldn't shoot. She had to go for all of the bloody lessons with Shane. But fair enough on that one. So when she'd got her gun, then they ran into problems. And when eventually the walkers streamed through the barn, she was dumped. And don't get me wrong, part of me was jumping for joy at that point, thinking she might die. But then Michonne comes along and saves her. And you know what? They struck up a romance. The two of them happily went off and enjoyed their summer together. But then what happened? Well, the second she gets a whiff of Governor Cock under her nose, she dumps Michonne like she's yesterday's news. The only woman who has kept you alive for the last summer, you've just dumped in the hope of getting some penis. And then the worst part of all is even after all that, she then finds Rick, she tries to unite the two. She then works out the governor is an arsehole, and she has a chance to stab him, but she doesn't. And I tell you what, that day she was bitten was a happy, happy day in my house. I jumped for bloody joy. Number 3 goes to Jim Halpert from The Office. Now, there is a reason why I've never particularly liked Jim's character. And I think the trouble is that The Office is meant to be an American workplace. It's pretty much a workplace. But one of the things that always gets me is Jim is technically then in that case supposed to be us. So he's supposed to be the viewer. Because we all know a Dwight, we all know a Phyllis, we all know a Stanley, we all know a Meredith, and we all know an Angela. But the truth is that when we look, we think, well, Jim must be us. But then equally I turn around and think, well, actually Jim was one of the worst characters. So he was constantly pulling pranks, half-assing his work most of the time, didn't really give a stuff when he thought the company was going to go down, spent the entire time actually trying to take someone else's fiancée. Let's not get that wrong. Pam was not his when they first got together. Oh no, she was quite miserable with Roy, but let's not look at that one. He has disdain for the people he works for. He generally doesn't like any of them, despite the fact that he has to spend the majority of his life there. He's quite nasty about his boss, he's quite nasty about his other co-workers, he's even quite nasty about his wife at points. Now don't get me wrong, Pam nearly edged him out with the whole way she treated the athlete thing, But part of me was also a bit, well, Jim, you could have just been, well, a bit more of a man about the situation and simply told her what was going to happen and been a bit more communicative, but you didn't. And that episode when you snapped when she didn't video Cece, despite the fact that you couldn't be asked to be there, was when it confirmed that you were an arsehole. Number 2, Jax Teller from Sons of Anarchy. You know, there's nothing good I can say about Jax Teller when it came down to everything. So let me list the reasons why I think he's an arsehole. Number 1, could have left Charming at any point he ever wanted to. Your wife was a doctor, not a stripper or a whore, so you would have found work somewhere else quite easily, my friend. Your mother was a complete dick, but yet you could have just shouted her down or been a bit more authoritative, but you never did. You knew Clay was ropey, but you carried on listening to his stupidly big face anyway. And you know what the worst part of it all was even when it was done and you had your chance and you'd realised, I have to escape, you could have burnt the note, burnt your jacket, left Chibs, Juicy, the lot of them behind, and actually gone and had a lovely life with your sons. But you didn't. What did you do? You sat there, you failed your arms out, and you smashed into the front of a truck, which ultimately just left your children with a former OG and their junky mother. And I mean, what kind of life is that for them? At the end of the day, you took the selfish, arseholey way out of your problems. You utter arsehole. So just before I reveal my number 1, I thought I'd list 3 people who didn't quite make it into the top 5. And those are Brian Griffin from Family Guy, Michael Bluth from Arrested Development, and Ted Mosby from How I Met Your Mother. Now, Brian doesn't quite make it because every now and again he does the right thing, but don't get me wrong, the fact that they're still making them would lead me to believe that he'll eventually hit the top 5 of arseholeness every now and again. Michael Bluth doesn't quite make it because I did feel sorry for his situation, and his wife died. However, it was quite mean to George Michael, and the last time I checked, it was your father's business you were running, not yours. So quite why you were so judgmental of everyone else, I don't quite know. And then Ted, oh, Teddy, I don't quite know why it is I didn't like you very much. Maybe it's because you stunk of desperation, but yet still managed to get your hands on women, or the fact that you were actually just quite nasty to a lot of people. Or more the fact that, well, you just grew old and bore your kids onto that sofa. And then the fact that your wife ended up dead, I think is about the only reason you didn't hit the top 5. And the number 1 spot goes to Ross Geller from Friends. Now, I can't sit here and list every single reason why I think Ross Geller is an arsehole, because quite frankly, there isn't enough tape and memory to save those responses. But let me go over the main reasons why I don't like him. Number 1, he's self-centered. Number 2, he didn't tell Rachel that they were still married. And number 3, he's very, very nasty to most of his friends. I mean, at the end of the day, his rage problems? Who on earth has rage problems? Where on earth have you got even to be panicked about? You're in a fantastic job, you have a son, and you get on with everybody that you meet most of the time, but you're still an arsehole. Why do people like you? Perhaps there's a problem that I've got with it, but just think about his actions. The only thing funny he ever did the whole show was when he was lifting that sofa up the stairs, and even then, it was because he shouted at his 3 friends. Well, you know what? I won't have it anymore. So for me, the number 1 person who's the biggest arsehole out there is Ross Geller.
So there we have it. Ross Geller, the biggest arsehole. Well, beloved TV arsehole. To be fair, he probably is the biggest arsehole. Hope you enjoyed the videos. Like I say, please subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, everything else that you can possibly imagine. You can come along and see me live as well. So this is the first video, so be gentle with me in the comments, or don't be. You know what? I'm probably not going to read too many of them anyway. Yeah, I am, and then I'll cry. Please don't upset me.